She wasn't supposed to speak. Wasn't supposed to look. Wasn't even supposed to exist in his world. But Zoe Green opened her mouth anyway. That painting is fake. 3 words. $15 million. One very dangerous man whose reputation she just destroyed in front of every killer in the room. Alessandro Greco built his empire on knowing when people lied to him. He'd never been fooled. Never been played. Never looked weak. Until tonight. His eyes locked on hers, the maid's daughter who saw what 3 expert authenticators missed. The girl who just exposed the one thing he bought to prove he was more than a monster. 48 hours, he said, his voice like winter. Prove it's fake. Find who sold it to me. He stepped closer. Close enough she could smell danger. Or I'll find out if you're lying with your last breath. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comment section where you are watching from, because tomorrow I'll be giving you an interesting story such as this one and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The champagne glass shattered before the scream could. Zoe Green watched it happen in slow motion, her hand, trembling with words she couldn't swallow, tipping the tray just enough. Crystal met marble with a sound like a gunshot, and suddenly every eye in the gallery hall turned toward her. 30 men in suits worth more than her life. 30 pairs of eyes that had seen people disappear for less than spilled champagne. And at the center of them all, Alessandro Greco, the man who owned this house, this city, and possibly her next breath. I'm so sorry, Zoe started, but her mother was already there, already kneeling, already murmuring apologies while gathering glass with bare hands. Leave it. Alessandro's voice cut through the air. 2 words. Quiet. Absolute. Teresa froze, a piece of crystal pressed against her palm, drawing blood. Zoe felt her heart trying to escape her rib cage. Alessandro walked toward them, each footstep measured. He was younger than Zoe expected. Mid-30s maybe, with dark eyes that missed nothing and the kind of controlled stillness that came from always being the most dangerous person in any room. You were looking at my painting, he said, his gaze fixed on Zoe. Before you dropped the tray. Why were you staring at my Caravaggio? The room went silent. This was entertainment for them. A maid's daughter about to be made an example. Zoe knew the script. Apologize. Lower your eyes. Become small enough to slip through the cracks of their notice. But the painting hung there behind Alessandro, and she could see every technical impossibility, every historical inaccuracy. And something in his face, some desperate need for the painting to be real, made her forget every survival lesson she'd ever learned. Because, Zoe heard herself say, her voice barely above a whisper, it's not a Caravaggio. The silence changed quality. Became sharp. Dangerous. What did you say? Alessandro's voice was soft in the way a knife is soft before it cuts. The painting. It's not real. It's a forgery. Someone laughed. Sharp. Disbelieving. Paolo, his consigliere, moved closer. But Alessandro held up one hand, stopping him. You're telling me that my authenticated Caravaggio, purchased from one of the most reputable dealers in Europe, verified by 3 independent experts, is fake? Yes. Zoe's hands were shaking. The brushwork in Judith's sleeve is too loose. Caravaggio used tighter, more controlled strokes. The craquelure, the crack pattern, it's artificial. And the ground layer where the frame meets canvas shows titanium white, which didn't exist until the 20th century. The room erupted in angry voices, but Alessandro raised his hand again. Silence crashed down. He walked toward Zoe, close enough that she could smell cedar and something darker. You're saying I was swindled? That I paid $15 million for a fake? That I stood here tonight showing off a lie to my associates. Zoe swallowed. I'm saying someone fooled you. Someone very good. But yes, it's not authentic. And you know this because? Because I studied this. The words felt dangerous. I was an art history major. 3 years at university, specializing in Baroque masters. I know Caravaggio's technique. His materials. Alessandro stared at her. Then turned to Paolo. Get Marco De Santis on the phone. Now, tell him to bring his equipment. Capo, you can't be serious. Now, Paolo. Alessandro turned back to Zoe. Marco De Santis is a forensic art analyst. He'll examine the painting tonight. If you're right, you've saved me from humiliation. You'll be rewarded. He paused. But if you're wrong, if you've made me look like a fool who believes his maid's daughter over expert authenticators, then you and your mother will wish you'd kept your mouth shut. Teresa made a small sound, half sob, half prayer. Gentlemen, Alessandro addressed the room, it seems we have unexpected entertainment. A test of authenticity. The men settled in, making bets. Zoe felt her mother's hand find hers, both slick with fierce sweat. The next hour crawled by. Marco De Santis arrived, nervous, 60-ish, with equipment cases. He worked in silence. Magnification tools, ultraviolet light, microsamples. Alessandro stood perfectly still, hands clenched white. This painting meant something to him beyond money. Finally, De Santis stepped back, removed his glasses, looked at Alessandro with pity. Don Greco, he said quietly. The girl is right. This is an excellent forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. The room exploded. Alessandro didn't move, just stared at the $15 million lie that had promised to be something pure in his world of corruption. Then, slowly, he turned to Zoe. What's your name? Zoe Green. Zoe Green. The maid's daughter who sees what experts miss. He looked at Paolo. Clear the room. Everyone out. When the door closed, just 4 remained. Alessandro, Paolo, Zoe, and Teresa. Alessandro poured scotch, drank it in one swallow, turned back to Zoe. You have 48 hours. 48 hours for what? To prove how you know so much. To find who sold me this forgery. To help me get my money back. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Right now, you're the only person who's told me the truth. I need to know if that makes you an asset or a threat. And if I can't? Then we'll find out how much your art history knowledge is worth. 48 hours. Paolo will escort you to your quarters. You don't leave this estate. You figure out how to fix what you've broken. She didn't break anything, Teresa said fiercely. She told you the truth. The truth just cost me $15 million and made me look like a fool. So yes, your daughter broke something. Now she's going to help me fix it. As Paolo led them out, Zoe looked back. Alessandro stood before the painting, alone, staring at the beautiful lie with such profound loss that something in her chest cracked open. She'd spoken the truth. Done the right thing. So why did it feel like she just destroyed something she didn't understand? Have you ever told a truth that changed everything, even though you knew it might cost you? What happened? Share your story in the comments. The quarters they were given weren't quarters at all. They were a gilded cage. Zoe stood at the window of the guest suite, watching dawn break over Alessandro's estate. Manicured gardens stretched toward iron gates she couldn't pass through. Somewhere beyond those walls was their tiny apartment, their real life, the invisibility that had kept them safe. Bella, come away from the window. Teresa sat on the edge of the silk-covered bed, her bandaged hand pressed against her chest. She hadn't slept. Neither had Zoe. Mama, I'm sorry. I should have. You should have nothing. Teresa's voice was firm despite her exhaustion. You told the truth. That's all you did. The truth might get us killed. Then we die honest. Teresa managed a small smile. Your father would have been proud. The words hit Zoe's chest like a fist. Her father, the professor who'd filled their apartment with art books he couldn't afford, who'd traced his daughter's small hand over reproductions of masterpieces, who'd died believing Zoe would finish what he'd started. She'd abandoned that dream to save her mother. And now here she was, that abandoned knowledge turned into a weapon she didn't know how to wield. A knock at the door made them both jump. Paolo entered without waiting for permission. His expression sour. The boss wants to see you. Just the girl. I'm coming with her, Teresa said, standing. The boss said just the girl. Zoe squeezed her mother's hand. It's okay, Mama. I'll be fine. She wasn't fine. She was terrified. But she followed Paolo through corridors that smelled of old money and new violence, past guards who watched her with predatory interest, until they reached a room she hadn't seen before. Alessandro's study was different from the rest of the house. No marble here, no ostentatious displays of wealth. Just floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, worn leather chairs, and morning light filtering through tall windows. It felt almost human. Alessandro stood by those windows, still wearing last night's clothes, a tumbler of what was probably scotch in his hand despite the early hour. He didn't turn when she entered. Close the door, he said. Zoe did. Paolo remained outside. The click of the lock sounded final. Do you know what that painting was supposed to be? Alessandro asked the window. Zoe's throat was dry. A Caravaggio. Judith beheading Holofernes. Painted around 1599, one of his most. I don't mean the art history. He finally turned to face her. In the morning light, he looked exhausted. Human. I mean what it was supposed to be for me. Zoe didn't answer. Didn't know how. Alessandro took a long drink. My brother, Marco. He was the one who loved art. Really loved it, the way you probably do. He could talk for hours about brushstrokes and symbolism and the way light worked in a painting. His voice went quiet. I was busy building what our father started. Building power. Building fear. Marco used to say I was too focused on destroying things to notice anything beautiful. He set down his glass with careful precision. He died 3 years ago. Caught in crossfire meant for me. Alessandro's jaw tightened. I bought that painting for him. To prove he was wrong. To prove I could see beauty. Could honor something beyond violence. Zoe felt something shift in her chest. Mr. Greco, So when you stood in my gallery, in front of my associates, and told me that painting was a lie. He walked toward her slowly. You didn't just expose a forgery. You exposed me. You showed everyone that even when I try to be something more than what I am, I fail. I get it wrong. I'm still just a man who knows violence and nothing else. That's not true, Zoe said, the words surprising her. You brought in an expert. You listened. Most men with your power would have had me thrown out, or worse, just for speaking. You wanted to know the truth more than you wanted to protect your ego. Did I? Alessandro stopped in front of her. Or did I just want to humiliate you for humiliating me? I don't think so. Zoe met his gaze, even though everything in her screamed to look away. I think you wanted the painting to be real so badly that you needed proof it wasn't. Because living with a beautiful lie is worse than facing an ugly truth. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. How old are you? Alessandro asked suddenly. 26. And you were 3 years into university when you stopped? Yes. Why? Zoe hesitated. This felt more dangerous than discussing the painting. My father died. Medical debts. My mother needed help. Someone had to choose. So you chose her over your dreams. I chose survival over selfishness. That's not the same thing. Alessandro moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. I had Paolo look into you last night. Zoe Green. Full scholarship to university. Top marks in every class. Professor Martinelli wrote in a recommendation letter that you had the finest eye for technical analysis he'd seen in 20 years of teaching. He looked up. And you walked away from all of that to scrub my floors. Shame burned through Zoe's chest. There's no shame in honest work. I didn't say there was. I'm saying there's tragedy in wasted potential. He opened the folder, spread papers across his desk. These are the authentication documents for the painting. Certificates, provenance reports, expert testimonials. I paid $300,000 just for the authentication process. And all of it was lies. Zoe stepped closer, studying the documents. Her fingers itched to touch them, to trace the chain of deception. May I? Alessandro gestured permission. She picked up the provenance report, scanning the claimed history. It says here the painting was owned by the Visconti family in Rome from 1890 to 1965. Yes. That's impossible. The Visconti collection was catalogued in 1932. There was no Caravaggio listed. She picked up another document. And this authentication from Dr. Russo at the Uffizi. Dr. Russo retired 8 years ago. He doesn't do private authentications anymore. How do you know that? Because I wrote him asking for an internship 6 months before I left university. He wrote back personally, explaining he was retiring to write a book. Zoe's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. Someone created an entire false paper trail. This isn't just a forgery. It's a sophisticated con. The painting is the centerpiece, but the documentation is what makes it believable. Alessandro watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Keep going. The dealer, Zoe found the purchase agreement, Antonio Bianchi from Milan. Do you know him personally? No. He was recommended by an associate. Which associate? Does it matter? It might. Zoe looked up. If someone targeted you specifically, they'd need to know your interests, your vulnerabilities. They'd need access to your network. Something dark crossed Alessandro's face. You're saying someone I trust set me up. I'm saying whoever did this knew exactly how to reach you. Knew about your brother. Knew you'd want a Caravaggio specifically. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Knew you'd see it as redemption. The word hung between them like a confession. Alessandro's expression went cold. You're very observant, Zoe Green. Very intelligent. That makes you useful. He moved closer, and she fought the urge to step back. It also makes you dangerous. Because you see too much. Understand too much. And in my world, people who see too much don't live long. Zoe's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. Then why give me 48 hours? Why not just deal with the problem? Because, Alessandro said softly, I'm tired of being surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. You told me the truth even when it could have killed you. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and I haven't decided which yet. Maybe it's both. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Maybe. He moved back to his desk, pulled out a laptop. This is everything I have on the dealer, the authentication process, the transaction. You have access to my library, my files, my resources. Paolo will escort you anywhere on the estate you need to go. But you don't leave. You don't make calls. You don't contact anyone outside these walls. And my mother? Will be comfortable. Safe. Provided you deliver what I need. He met her eyes. I want the name of who sold me that forgery. I want my money back. And I want proof, evidence that will let me destroy whoever thought they could make a fool of Alessandro Greco. Zoe swallowed. And if I find all that? Then maybe your art history degree won't be wasted after all. He turned back to the window, dismissing her. You have 47 hours left. I suggest you don't waste them. Zoe gathered the documents with shaking hands. She was almost to the door when his voice stopped her. Zoe! She turned. Alessandro was silhouetted against the morning light. Unreadable. That thing you said. About living with a beautiful lie being worse than facing an ugly truth. His voice was quiet. Do you really believe that? Zoe thought about her abandoned dreams, her father's death, the way she'd made herself invisible to survive. Thought about the relief she'd felt last night, speaking truth after years of silence, even as it terrified her. Yes, she said. I believe that. Alessandro nodded slowly. Then maybe there's hope for both of us. As Paolo led her back to her quarters, Zoe clutched the documents to her chest and tried to ignore how her hands trembled. She'd been given a chance. 47 hours to prove her worth, to use the knowledge she'd buried, to be seen as something more than invisible help. She just hoped proving herself wouldn't cost her everything. Zoe spread the documents across the suite's dining table like pieces of a puzzle she didn't know how to solve. Teresa brought her coffee, real coffee, not the instant powder they survived on at home, and watched her daughter work with worried eyes. Bella, you don't have to do this. We could tell him it's impossible, that you can't. I can, Mama. Zoe circled another inconsistency in the provenance report with red pen. I just need to think. But thinking was dangerous. Because the more she studied these documents, the more she realized how carefully constructed the con was. This wasn't some amateur forger getting lucky. This was professional. Organized. The kind of operation that required resources, connections, and intimate knowledge of Alessandro's world. Which meant whoever did this was either very brave or very stupid. Or close enough to Alessandro that they knew exactly how to hurt him. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Paolo entered. His expression slightly less hostile than before. The boss wants you in his office. 1 hour. Says to bring whatever you've found. 1 hour. Zoe looked at the chaos of papers, her notes, the thread she'd started to pull but couldn't quite follow to their conclusion. I need more time. I need to verify. 1 hour, Paolo repeated. Don't be late. When he left, Teresa gripped Zoe's shoulders. What if you can't figure it out? What if? Then I tell him the truth. Zoe met her mother's eyes. That's all I know how to do anymore, Mama. Tell the truth and hope it's enough. 45 minutes later, Zoe walked into Alessandro's office with a folder of notes that felt too thin, too incomplete. He sat behind his desk, reading something on his laptop, and didn't look up when she entered. Tell me what you've found, he said. Zoe laid out her notes with hands that wanted to shake. The provenance documentation is sophisticated but flawed. Dr. Russo's signature doesn't match his authentic signatures from the same period. The pressure points are different, suggesting a tracing rather than an original. The Visconti family claim is verifiable false based on published catalogs. And Antonio Bianchi. I know about Bianchi, Alessandro interrupted, his voice flat. Zoe paused. You do. I had him picked up 3 hours ago. Alessandro finally looked at her, and his eyes were cold. He's currently in a warehouse in Napoli being very cooperative about answering questions. The casual way he said it made Zoe's stomach turn. She knew what being very cooperative meant in Alessandro's world. "What did he tell you?" she asked carefully. "That he was paid to facilitate the sale. That the painting came from a supplier in Rome he'd worked with before. That the authentication documents were provided to him already completed." Alessandro leaned back in his chair. "He's given me a name. Giancarlo Rossi. Small-time art dealer, big-time con artist." Relief and something else, disappointment maybe, washed through Zoe. "So you found who sold you the forgery." "I've found who delivered it." Alessandro's expression didn't change. "I haven't found who commissioned it. Who knew exactly what painting to fake, what story to tell, how to get it into my hands." He stood, walked around the desk. "That's what I need you for, Zoe. Because Bianchi is terrified enough to tell me everything he knows, but he doesn't know enough. The person who set this up covered their tracks too well." Zoe's mind raced. "The recommendation. You said an associate recommended Bianchi to you. Who was it?" Alessandro went very still. "That's not your concern. It is if you want the truth. Whoever recommended him is either complicit or was used as an unwitting connection. Either way, they're the link between you and the con." "I said it's not your concern." Alessandro's voice had an edge now. Dangerous. But Zoe had spent too many years swallowing her words, making herself small. Something had broken in her last night when she'd spoken truth to power and survived. She couldn't go back to silence now. "You asked me to find who did this. To give you proof. But you're holding back information because you don't trust me, or because you're protecting someone, or because you're scared of what I might find." She met his gaze. "You can't have it both ways, Mr. Greco. Either you want the truth or you don't." The silence stretched dangerous and taut. Paolo, standing by the door, shifted his weight like he was preparing to throw her out. Or worse. Then Alessandro laughed. A short, sharp sound without humor. "You have courage, Zoe Green. Stupid courage, but courage." He returned to his desk, pulled up something on his laptop, turned it to face her. "The associate who recommended Bianchi was my cousin, Stefano Greco. He handles most of my legitimate business interests, art acquisitions, real estate, investments." Zoe studied the screen. A professional photo showed a man in his 40s, handsome in an artificial way, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How close are you?" "He's family." "That's not what I asked." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Close enough that I trust him with millions of dollars. Close enough that if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm gathering information." Zoe pulled out her phone, then remembered they'd taken it when she arrived. "I need internet access. I need to research Stefano's connections, his financial history, any links to Giancarlo Rossi or—" "No." Alessandro closed the laptop. "You don't investigate my family. Even if your family is stealing from you?" "Watch your mouth." Paolo's hand moved toward his jacket. But Zoe couldn't stop. The pieces were there, just out of reach, and for the first time in 3 years she felt like herself again. Like the student who'd stayed up all night tracing provenance chains, who'd caught forgeries in gallery assessments, who'd loved the detective work of art history as much as the art itself. "Think about it," she said, speaking quickly before Alessandro could shut her down. "Whoever did this needed intimate knowledge of your interests. Knew about your brother. Knew you'd want a Caravaggio specifically. Knew exactly how much you'd pay without questioning too hard because it meant something personal." She paused. "Who would know all that except someone very close to you?" Alessandro's expression was unreadable. Stefano brought me investment opportunities before. He's never. Has he ever brought you art before? The question landed like a stone in still water. Alessandro went quiet. Too quiet. He has, hasn't he? Zoe pressed. And were those pieces authenticated? Verified? Or did you trust him because he's family? This conversation is over. Alessandro's voice was ice. You're here to analyze paintings, not my relationships. I'm here because you wanted the truth. Zoe's frustration boiled over. But you only want the truth that doesn't hurt. The truth that lets you keep believing the people close to you are loyal. That's not how truth works, Mr. Greco. Truth doesn't care about your comfort. Careful, girl. Paolo moved forward. But Alessandro held up his hand. He stared at Zoe for a long moment, something dangerous and hurt and angry warring in his eyes. Get out, he said quietly. Mr. Greco. Get out. Go back to your quarters. Don't leave them without permission. He turned away from her. You have 36 hours left. Use them to find me concrete proof, not theories about my family based on nothing but suspicion. Zoe wanted to argue, wanted to make him see. But Paolo's hand on her arm was insistent, and she let herself be led out. Back in the suite, Teresa took one look at her face and pulled her into an embrace. What happened? I found a thread, Zoe said into her mother's shoulder. And he won't let me pull it because it leads too close to home. Then maybe you should leave it alone. I can't. Zoe pulled back. Because if I'm right, someone close to him is playing him for a fool. And the next time they won't stop at $15 million. That's not your problem, Bella. We clean his house, we stay invisible, we survive. That's all we need to do. Is it? Zoe looked at her mother. Because I've been invisible for 3 years, Mama. I've been silent and small and safe. And where has it gotten us? We're still poor. Still afraid. Still one mistake away from losing everything. Her voice broke. At least now I'm using my mind. At least now someone sees me. He's a dangerous man, Zoe. I know. Zoe wiped her eyes. But so is living like we're already dead. Teresa had no answer for that. Hours later, lying awake while her mother slept, Zoe stared at the ceiling and replayed every conversation, every document, every detail. Alessandro had shut her down when she'd mentioned his cousin. But his reaction had told her everything she needed to know. Stefano Greco was involved. She was sure of it now. The question was how to prove it with 36 hours left and no access to the resources she needed. The answer came to her in the dark. She couldn't prove it alone. She needed Alessandro to see the truth. Needed him to look past his loyalty and his denial and his desperate need to believe family meant safety. She needed him to trust her more than he trusted blood. And she had no idea how to make that happen. Zoe woke to Paolo shaking her shoulder roughly. Get dressed. The boss wants you. Now. What time is it? Zoe sat up, disoriented. Beside her, Teresa stirred. 4 a.m. Move. 10 minutes later, Zoe was being hustled into Alessandro's study wearing yesterday's clothes, her hair barely brushed. Alessandro stood by the window again. Did he ever sleep? But this time he wasn't alone. An older man in an expensive suit sat in one of the leather chairs, looking irritated at the early hour. This is the girl? The man asked. This is Zoe Green. Alessandro turned. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. Something had happened. Zoe, this is Signore Battista. He represents the insurance company that covered my art collection. Zoe's stomach dropped. Insurance. The forgery claim has been filed, Batista said, his tone clipped. But my company requires independent verification before we process a $15 million payout. Which means, Signorina, you and Don Greco will be accompanying me to Rome today to meet with our chief art authentication specialist. Rome. Zoe looked at Alessandro. I don't understand. Marco DeSantis already verified. DeSantis works for me, Alessandro interrupted. The insurance company needs their own expert. Someone without ties to either party. His expression was unreadable. We leave in 1 hour. Pack what you need. Mr. Greco, I can't just. My mother. Your mother stays here. Under Paolo's protection. The way he said protection made it clear it was also surveillance. You come with me. Non-negotiable. The helicopter ride to Rome should have been breathtaking. Zoe had never been in a helicopter, had barely been outside their city. But she spent the journey hyper-aware of Alessandro sitting across from her, silent and tense, while Batista reviewed documents beside him. They hadn't spoken since the study. Alessandro had retreated behind walls Zoe could feel but not see, the powerful man again, not the grieving brother who'd confessed his failures over scotch. She'd pushed too hard yesterday. Accused his family. Crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The helicopter landed on a private pad near the Galleria Borghese. A car waited, whisking them through Rome's early morning streets to a nondescript building in Trastevere. Dr. Amara Okonkwo's authentication lab occupied the entire third floor. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of someone who suffered no fools. Don Greco. She shook Alessandro's hand without warmth. I've examined the photographs and preliminary reports. Let me be clear, if this painting is genuine, my reputation confirms it. If it's fake, I will not be pressured by anyone. Not you, not Signore Batista, not the Pope himself, to say otherwise. I wouldn't expect anything less, Alessandro said smoothly. Dr. Okonkwo turned to Zoe. And you're the one who identified the forgery? Yes, Signora. Talk me through it. For the next hour, Zoe walked Dr. Okonkwo through every technical detail. The brushwork inconsistencies, the artificial aging, the pigment composition, the provenance flaws. The doctor listened, occasionally asking sharp questions that made Zoe grateful for every lecture she'd ever absorbed. Alessandro watched from across the room, his expression giving nothing away. Impressive, Dr. Okonkwo said finally. You have formal training? 3 years of university. Art history, specialization in Baroque masters. Why only 3 years? Zoe hesitated. Personal circumstances. Dr. Okonkwo made notes. Well, your analysis is sound. Preliminary assessment confirms forgery. But I'll need several days for complete forensic testing before I submit my official report to the insurance company. Several days. Alessandro's voice was tight. I was told this could be expedited. Expedited, yes. Rushed. No. Art authentication is not fast food. Don Greco. She fixed him with a stern look. You want your money back? You wait for proper process. Batista nodded. We'll require both you and Signorina Green to remain available for follow-up questions during the investigation. I have business in Rome anyway, Alessandro said. We'll stay. Wait. Zoe's pulse quickened. Fine. Dr. Okonkwo turned to Zoe. I could use an assistant while I work, if you're interested. Your eye is excellent, and I'm short-staffed this week. Yes. Yes, I'd be honored. Good. Be here tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late. She dismissed them with a wave. The hotel Alessandro brought them to was 5-star luxury that made Zoe's head spin. Marble lobby, crystal chandeliers, staff who moved like dancers. She felt acutely aware of her cheap clothes, her worn shoes, the way she didn't belong in spaces like this. 2 rooms, Alessandro told the desk clerk. Adjoining. Of course, Don Greco. The penthouse suite is ready. In the elevator, alone finally, Zoe found her voice. You don't have to do this. Put me up in an expensive hotel. I could stay somewhere less. You're working for me. You stay where I can reach you. His tone was flat, businesslike. The walls were still up. The penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, rooms larger than her entire apartment, art on the walls that was probably worth more than her life. Alessandro's room was through one door, hers through another. Order room service if you're hungry. Don't leave the hotel without telling me. Alessandro moved toward his door. Mr. Greco. He paused, didn't turn around. Yesterday, what I said about your cousin. I shouldn't have. You were right. His voice was quiet. I had Stefano's finances investigated last night. He's been living beyond his means for 2 years. Gambling debts. Bad investments. Exactly the kind of pressure that makes people desperate. Zoe's breath caught. So you believe me? I believe the evidence. He finally turned to face her. But believing and accepting are different things. Stefano is family. In my world, family is supposed to be sacred. The one thing you can trust when everything else is blood and betrayal. His laugh was bitter. Apparently I was wrong about that too. I'm sorry. Don't be. You did what I asked. Told me the truth. He rubbed his face, exhaustion showing through. I just wish the truth didn't cost so much. They stood there in the opulent suite, the city glittering below, 2 people trapped together by circumstances neither had chosen. Why did you really bring me to Rome? Zoe asked. You could have come alone. Left me locked in that guest suite. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. Because when you talked about the painting yesterday, when you walked Dr. Okonkwo through your analysis, you came alive. Your whole face changed. You weren't afraid anymore. You were just brilliant. He met her eyes. And I realized that keeping you locked up, using you like a tool, was just another way of wasting something beautiful. Like the fake painting. Like everything I touch. The honesty in his voice made Zoe's chest ache. You don't waste everything. Don't I? He moved to the window. My brother died because of me. I bought a fake masterpiece to prove I was more than a thug. I'm about to destroy my cousin because he stole from me. What part of that isn't waste? Zoe crossed to stand beside him. Below, Rome spread out like a painting itself. Ancient and modern, beautiful and broken. The part where you brought me here. Where you're letting me work with Dr. Okonkwo. Where you're giving me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Your career. My purpose. She looked at him. I've spent 3 years invisible. Scrubbing floors and pretending I don't see the art on your walls because seeing it hurt too much. But you saw me anyway. Even when I was just your maid's daughter. You saw me. Alessandro turned to face her fully. They were close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with exhaustion and something more human. I see you, Zoe Green, he said softly. And it terrifies me. Because everyone I see, everyone I care about, ends up destroyed. Maybe that's because you keep pushing them away before they can choose to stay. The words hung between them. Dangerous and true. Alessandro's hand lifted, almost touching her face, then dropped. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow you start learning from one of the best authenticators in Europe. Don't waste it. He walked to his room, paused at the door. The adjoining door stays unlocked. If you need anything, if anything feels wrong, you come get me. Understood. Understood. When his door closed, Zoe stood alone in luxury she'd never imagined, looking out at a city she'd only seen in textbooks, and tried to understand how speaking truth to a dangerous man had somehow led to this. Forced proximity with someone who saw her, really saw her, for the first time in years. She should be terrified. Should be thinking of escape, of her mother, of all the ways this could end badly. Instead, she found herself thinking about the way Alessandro had looked at her when she'd talked about art. The way his voice had softened when he'd called her brilliant. The way he'd said we'll stay instead of I'll stay. Like they were in this together. Like she wasn't alone anymore. And that, Zoe realized as she finally crawled into bed, was the most dangerous truth of all. Working with Dr. Okonkwo was like coming home to a place Zoe had forgotten existed. The lab smelled of chemicals and old canvas, organized chaos that made perfect sense once you understood the system. For 3 days, Zoe assisted with the authentication process, preparing samples, documenting findings, learning techniques she'd only read about in textbooks. Alessandro appeared each evening to check on their progress, staying longer each time. He'd watch Zoe work with an intensity that made her skin warm, asking questions that showed he was actually listening, actually trying to understand the technical details that had once bored his associates. On the 4th evening, Dr. Okonkwo pulled out a bottle of wine. "The official report is complete," she announced. "Confirmed forgery, as suspected. The work is exceptional. Whoever created this studied Caravaggio extensively. But it's definitely modern, probably painted within the last 5 years." 5 years. Alessandro leaned forward. "You're certain?" "The pigment analysis doesn't lie. Some of the materials used weren't available before 2020. She poured 3 glasses. "The forger is talented, though. Very talented. This isn't their first work." "Meaning there are others," Zoe said. "Almost certainly. Forgers of this caliber don't create one piece and stop. It's a business." Dr. Okonkwo handed them each a glass. "I've sent inquiries to colleagues in other countries. If similar works have surfaced, we'll find them." After she left for the evening, Alessandro and Zoe remained in the lab, surrounded by equipment and evidence of beautiful deception. 5 years, Alessandro said quietly. "Marco died 3 years ago. Which means this painting was created before I ever thought to buy it. Before I told anyone I wanted a Caravaggio. Or someone knew you'd want one eventually," Zoe said. "Knew your brother's death would make you vulnerable to this specific piece." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Stefano knew. He was there when Marco died. Held me while I—" He stopped, drank his wine. "He knew everything." Zoe wanted to reach for his hand, comfort him somehow. But the distance between them felt both smaller and more dangerous than it had been days ago. "Tell me about your brother," she said instead. Alessandro looked at her, surprised. "Why?" "Because he's part of this story. Because understanding what the painting meant to you helps me understand why someone would use it as a weapon." She paused. "And because I want to know." For a long moment, Alessandro was silent. Then he stood, walked to the window overlooking Rome's evening lights. "Marco was younger than me by 4 years. Where I learned our father's business, the violence, the control, the fear. Marco learned to see beauty. He'd spend hours in museums. Said art was the proof that humans could create something pure even in a corrupt world." Alessandro's voice went soft with memory. "He used to drag me to galleries, trying to teach me what he saw. I never understood. Thought it was weakness." "It wasn't weakness," Zoe said. "I know that now. Then, I thought it made him vulnerable. Thought if he just learned to be harder, stronger, more like me, he'd be safer. He turned to face her. The night he died, we were at a restaurant. A rival family decided to make a statement. Marco saw the shooter before I did. Pushed me out of the way. Zoe's breath caught. He died in my arms. And his last words were, "Don't let them make you forget beauty exists." Alessandro's voice cracked slightly. So I promised him I'd try. That I'd learn what he'd tried to teach me. That I'd find a way to honor what he loved. The Caravaggio, Zoe whispered. The Caravaggio. Judith beheading Holofernes. Violence transformed into art. I thought it was perfect. Thought it would prove to Marco's ghost that I finally understood. He laughed bitterly. Instead, it proved I'm still the same fool who values power over truth. Zoe crossed to him, stood close enough to feel his pain like radiation. You're not a fool. You're a man who loved his brother and wanted to honor him. Someone exploited that love. That's not your failure. It's their cruelty. Alessandro looked down at her, something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. How do you do that? Do what? Make me feel less alone. His hand lifted, this time actually touching her face, just his fingertips against her cheek, gentle as a question. I've been surrounded by people my entire life. Associates, family, staff. But I've been alone in every room I've entered for 3 years. Until you stood in my gallery and told me the truth I didn't want to hear. Zoe's heart hammered. Mr. Greco. Alessandro. When it's just us, call me Alessandro. Alessandro, she breathed. I'm still your maid's daughter. I still scrub your floors. This, whatever this is, it can't. Can't what? Exist because of who we're supposed to be. He didn't move his hand from her face. I've spent my life following rules about who I'm supposed to be. Born into violence, raised to lead, expected to value loyalty over truth. And where has it gotten me? Alone with a fake painting and a cousin who betrayed me. I understand, Zoe said. I do. I've spent 3 years being who I'm supposed to be too. The invisible maid. The sacrificial daughter. The woman who makes herself small so others feel big. She stepped back, breaking contact. But understanding doesn't change reality. You're Alessandro Greco. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. His voice was fierce. You're brilliant. You see things others miss. You have courage that shames most of my soldiers. I'm scared. The confession burst out. I'm scared that I'm starting to care about you. That working in this lab, being seen for who I really am, having you look at me like I matter. I'm scared that when this ends, going back to invisibility will kill something in me that's just started breathing again. The honesty hung between them, naked and terrifying. Alessandro's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. Answer it, Zoe said quietly. He pulled it out, read the message. His expression went dark. Paolo. They found Giancarlo Rossi, the forger. He's agreed to talk. That's good news, isn't it? He'll only talk to me. In person. Tonight. Alessandro looked at her. I have to go to Napoli. It's a 3-hour drive. Then go. This is what you wanted. Answers. Come with me. Zoe blinked. What? Come with me. You understand the technical details better than I do. You'll know the right questions to ask. He paused. And I don't want to leave you here alone. I'm perfectly safe. Please. The word was simple, honest. I'm asking you to come with me. Not as my employee. As someone I trust. Zoe knew she should say no. should maintain distance, protect herself. But when she looked at Alessandro, really looked at him, she saw a man who'd spent 3 years alone with grief, who'd been betrayed by blood, who was learning to trust again one painful truth at a time. And she realized she was learning the same thing. "Okay," she said. "I'll come." The drive to Napoli was quiet at first. Alessandro's driver navigated Rome's night traffic while they sat in the back seat, the city lights painting patterns across their faces. "Tell me about your father," Alessandro said suddenly. Zoe turned, surprised. "Why?" "Because you sacrificed your dreams for your mother. That kind of love doesn't come from nowhere. Someone taught you to care that much." Zoe smiled despite herself. "He was a literature professor. Made almost nothing, spent it all on books and art reproductions. Used to take me to museums every Sunday, even when we could barely afford food." Her voice softened with memory. "He'd stand in front of paintings for hours, telling me stories about the artists, the historical context, the hidden symbols. Made everything come alive." "He sounds like Marco." "Maybe." They both understood that beauty matters. That it's not weakness or frivolity, it's proof that life means something beyond survival. She looked out the window. "When he died, the medical bills buried us. Insurance barely covered half. My mother worked 3 jobs, but it wasn't enough. So I made a choice. You left university. I left everything. My friends, my professors, my future. Became a maid because it paid better than retail and included housing." She turned back to him. "For 3 years, I scrubbed other people's floors and pretended I didn't see the art on their walls because looking at it hurt too much. Reminded me of everything I'd lost. And now I don't know." Zoe's voice wavered. "This week, working with Dr. Okonkwo, using my knowledge again, it's like being given back a part of myself I thought was dead. But it can't last. When we go home I'm still just. If you say, just a maid one more time, I'm going to lose my mind." Alessandro turned to face her fully. "You're an art historian who happens to be working as a maid. Those aren't the same thing. Tell that to the world." "I'm telling it to you." His intensity made her breath catch. "What if you didn't go back to scrubbing floors? What if I hired you as my art curator? Real position, real salary. You'd authenticate my collection, advise on acquisitions, have access to the kind of resources and training." "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because it feels like payment for whatever this is between us. Like you're trying to buy my gratitude or my—" She stopped, couldn't finish. "Your what, Zoe?" She met his eyes. "My feelings. Which are getting very complicated and very dangerous." Alessandro leaned closer. "What if I told you my feelings are complicated too? That I haven't stopped thinking about you since that first night? That watching you work this week, seeing you come alive with purpose, has made me realize how empty my life has been." "Then I'd say we're both in trouble," Zoe whispered. "Yeah," Alessandro said, his voice rough. "We probably are." The car drove on through the night, carrying them toward answers neither was sure they wanted to find. The warehouse in Napoli smelled like salt water and rust. Giancarlo Rossi sat in a metal chair under harsh fluorescent light, his hands zip-tied in front of him. He was younger than Zoe expected. Maybe 40, with paint-stained fingers and the exhausted eyes of someone who knew his choices had run out. 2 of Alessandro's men flanked him. Paolo stood by the door, watching Zoe with barely concealed disapproval. "She didn't belong here," his expression said. This was business. Dark business. But Alessandro's hand at the small of her back was steady as he guided her forward. "Signore Rossi," Alessandro said, his voice calm. Too calm. "This is Zoe Green." She's the one who identified your work as a forgery. Rossi looked at Zoe with something like curiosity. You have a good eye, Signorina. Most people, even experts, wouldn't have caught the ground layer issue. Most people don't love Caravaggio the way I do, Zoe said quietly. Something flickered across Rossi's face. Respect, maybe. I love him too. That's why I studied him for 15 years before attempting the forgery. Every brushstroke, every technique, He stopped himself. But you already know that. Alessandro pulled up a chair, sat across from Rossi. The casual posture was more frightening than rage would have been. Tell me who commissioned the painting. I told your men already. A businessman from Rome. Called himself Dante Green. Zoe's breath caught. Green. Common name, Alessandro said, but his eyes had sharpened. He paid me 50,000 euros, Rossi continued. Half up front, half on delivery. Gave me specifications. Had to be Judith beheading Holofernes. Had to pass as authentic to casual inspection. Said it was for a private collector who'd never submit it for serious authentication. But I did, Alessandro said. Which is why I'm sitting here instead of in my studio. Rossi's laugh was bitter. I knew it was risky. Knew whoever was buying it had plans beyond simple collecting. But 50,000 euros pays a lot of debts. Describe this Dante Green, Zoe said. Rossi closed his eyes. Remembering. Late 40s. Well-dressed. Spoke with a Roman accent, but something felt rehearsed about it. Like he was playing a part. He had a scar. He touched his left eyebrow. Here. Small, almost hidden. Alessandro stood abruptly. Walked away. Tension radiating from his shoulders. You know who it is, Zoe said. Paolo, show her the photo. Alessandro's voice was hollow. Paolo pulled up an image on his phone, showed it to Zoe. Stefano Greco stared back at her, the same professional photo from before, but now she could see it. The small scar above his left eyebrow, barely visible. Your cousin, she whispered. My family. Alessandro's laugh was jagged. The man I trusted with my legitimate business. Who stood beside me at Marco's funeral. Who helped me search for the perfect piece to honor my brother. He turned back to Rossi. How many others? What? How many other forgeries did you create for Dante Green? Rossi hesitated. Alessandro took a single step forward, and the forger's words tumbled out. 5. Over 2 years. Different artists. Vermeer. Rembrandt. A Titian. All sold through various dealers to different buyers. I don't know who purchased them. That wasn't my business. But the techniques were the same? The approach. Similar. Always targeting collectors who'd value the emotional connection over rigorous authentication. People buying with their hearts instead of their heads. Rossi looked at Alessandro. People like you, Don Greco. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Get him out of here, Alessandro said quietly. Keep him available. We're not done. As the men led Rossi away, Zoe moved to Alessandro's side. He stood rigid, staring at nothing. We have proof now, she said gently. Evidence that links Stefano to destroying the last bit of faith I had in family. In loyalty. In anything. His voice cracked. Marco used to tell me that my problem was I couldn't see past betrayal. That I expected everyone to eventually turn on me, so I kept them at a distance. And I'd tell him he was naive. That trust was a luxury we couldn't afford. Alessandro. He was right. I pushed everyone away except blood. Told myself family was sacred, the one thing you could count on. And now even that's poison. Zoe took his hand, The first time she'd initiated contact. His fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "Not all of it," she said. "Your love for Marco, that was real. Your grief, your desire to honor him, that was real. Stefano exploited it, but he didn't create it. The love was yours. He just used it as a weapon." Alessandro looked down at their joined hands. "I don't know how to do this. Trust again. Let someone close without waiting for the knife." "Neither do I," Zoe admitted. "I've spent 3 years keeping people at arm's length, making myself invisible so I couldn't be hurt again. But maybe," she swallowed hard, "maybe we could learn together how to be less alone." He turned to face her fully, his free hand rising to cup her face. "You scare me, Zoe Green. You scare me too." "Good." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "At least we're equally terrified." Then he kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, a question more than a claim. Zoe's hand curled into his shirt, anchoring herself as the world tilted. He tasted like coffee and desperation, like 3 years of grief finding its way towards something that might be hope. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he whispered. "The worst," Zoe agreed. "I'm still your employer. You're still my employee's daughter. There are 100 reasons this can't work." 112, Zoe said, trying to smile. "I counted. And yet." He kissed her again, deeper this time. Like he was trying to memorize the shape of her mouth, the taste of her, the reality of someone choosing to stay instead of run. A discreet cough made them spring apart. Paolo stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "The driver's ready when you are, Capo. It's a long ride back to Rome." The drive back was different. Zoe sat close to Alessandro now, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. The city lights gave way to darkness, the highway a ribbon of possibility. "Tell me something," Alessandro said into the quiet. "If money weren't an issue, if you could have anything, what would you do?" Zoe thought about it. "I'd finish my degree. Then I'd work in authentication. Maybe teach. Help train the next generation to see what I see. To love art the way my father taught me to love it. What if I told you that could happen?" She pulled back to look at him. "Alessandro. Not as payment. Not as some kind of transaction." His voice was earnest. "But as an investment in someone brilliant who deserves a chance. I'll fund your education. You finish your degree, work with the best authenticators in Europe, build the career you should have had. And yes, eventually, I'd want you to curate my collection, legitimately, professionally, at market rates. But that's business. This," he gestured between them, "this is separate. This is us figuring out if two broken people can make something whole." Tears burned Zoe's eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because Marco was right. Beauty matters. And you, your mind, your passion, your courage. You're the most beautiful thing I've encountered in 3 years of darkness." He wiped away the tear that escaped down her cheek. "Let me help you, Zoe. Not because I'm trying to buy you, but because watching you come alive this week has made me remember what living feels like." "What about my mother?" "She keeps her position, with a raise. Or retires comfortably if she wants." "Whatever makes her happy." Alessandro's smile was soft. "You gave up your dreams for her. Let me give them back." Zoe kissed him then, fierce and grateful and terrified and hopeful all at once. His arms came around her, holding her like she was precious, like she was something that mattered beyond utility or obligation. "Thank you," she whispered against his mouth. "Thank me by finishing what you started. Help me take down Stefano." Then help me figure out how to build something real in the wreckage. I can do that. They spent the rest of the drive in comfortable silence, occasionally kissing, occasionally talking about nothing important. Favorite books, childhood memories, the way Rome looked at sunrise. Building the foundation of something that might become love if they were brave enough to let it. When they finally arrived at the hotel as dawn was breaking, Alessandro walked her to her room, reluctant to let her go. Get some sleep, he said, brushing hair from her face. Tomorrow we have to figure out how to prove Stefano's guilt in a way that won't tear my organization apart. Tomorrow, Zoe agreed. Then, because she was learning to be brave, stay with me. Zoe. Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone right now. And I don't think you do either. Alessandro looked at her for a long moment. Then nodded. They lay together on top of the covers, still fully clothed, her back against his chest, his arm holding her close. Safe. Seen. Less alone than either had been in years. As Zoe drifted toward sleep, she heard Alessandro whisper, "Thank you for seeing the truth. In the painting. In me. In all of it. Thank you for listening," she whispered back. And for the first time since her father died, Zoe fell asleep believing tomorrow might actually be worth waking up for. What's the bravest choice you've made for love? Either romantic or otherwise? Tell us in the comments below. Zoe woke to shouting. Alessandro was in the suite's living room, phone pressed to his ear, his voice cold fury. I don't care what he says. Nobody moves until I get there. Nobody. She stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, hair tangled from sleep. What's happening? Alessandro ended the call, turned to face her. His expression made her blood run cold, not angry at her, but shutting down, walls slamming back into place. Stefano knows we're investigating him. Someone tipped him off. His voice was flat, emotionless. He's called an emergency family meeting. Tonight. Every capo, every associate. He's going to force my hand. Make me either accuse him publicly without ironclad proof, or let it go. But we have proof. Rossi's testimony, the documents. Testimony from a forger I had kidnapped. Documents that could be interpreted differently. A scar that half of Rome probably has. Alessandro moved to the window, his back to her. In my world, accusing family without absolute certainty is a death sentence. For them or for you. The organization fractures. Loyalty divides. People die. Zoe's chest tightened. So what are you saying? I'm saying I have to choose. My cousin or my empire. Family or truth. He finally turned, and his eyes were empty. And I need you to go home. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Paolo's driving you back this morning. Your mother will meet you at a safe house. You'll both be protected, compensated generously for your time. Consider your debt paid. My debt. Zoe's voice rose. Alessandro, what are you talking about? You did what I asked. Found the forger, traced the con. I'm grateful. But this. He gestured vaguely between them. Last night was a mistake. I got too close, forgot who I am, what my responsibilities are. You're a distraction I can't afford right now. Each word was a knife. Zoe felt herself bleeding but couldn't understand where the wound was. A distraction, she repeated numbly. That's what I am to you? That's what you have to be. His voice was hard now, the dangerous man she'd first met. I have a war to prevent, Zoe. I don't have time to play house with my maid's daughter. The casual cruelty of it, maid's daughter, after everything they'd shared, every vulnerability, every kiss, Zoe felt something inside her crack apart. You're doing it again, she said, her voice shaking. pushing people away before they can hurt you. Just like your brother said. Don't you dare. Mako was right about you. The words exploded out. You're so terrified of being betrayed that you sabotage anything real before it has a chance. Last night you held me and talked about building something together. This morning I'm a distraction you need to discard. Which one is the lie, Alessandro? Both. Neither. Does it matter? His expression was carved from stone. You were useful. Now you're a liability. That's the truth you claim to love so much. Zoe felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. I was wrong about you. I thought underneath the violence and the power, there was a man worth knowing, worth caring about. But you're just a coward hiding behind walls, too afraid to let anyone actually see you. Get out. His voice was quiet, lethal. Gladly. Zoe grabbed her jacket, hands shaking. Enjoy your empire, Don Greco. I hope it keeps you warm at night. She made it to the door before his voice stopped her. Zoe. She turned, hope flaring stupidly in her chest. Alessandro stood silhouetted against the Roman sunrise, and his expression was devastated. Grief and regret and something that might have been love if he'd been brave enough to claim it. I'm sorry, he whispered. Then he turned away, dismissing her for the last time. The safe house was a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Teresa was already there, confused and frightened, when Paolo delivered Zoe like a package. What happened, Bella? They came in the middle of the night, said we had to leave immediately. Zoe collapsed into her mother's arms and finally let herself break. For 2 days, she barely moved from the couch. Teresa brought her food she didn't eat, asked questions she couldn't answer. The television played news she didn't process. The world continued while Zoe tried to understand how hope could be given and destroyed so quickly. On the 3rd morning, Teresa sat beside her daughter with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. You need to see this. The headline read, Prominent businessman Stefano Greco arrested for art fraud and embezzlement. Zoe's hands shook as she read. Alessandro had done it, publicly accused his cousin, provided evidence to authorities, dismantled the forgery operation. The article mentioned credible testimony from multiple sources and forensic evidence provided by international experts. He'd chosen truth over family, empire over loyalty. There's more, Teresa said quietly, handing her an envelope. This came this morning. Inside was a letter in Alessandro's handwriting, and a bank statement showing a sum that made Zoe's vision blur. Zoe. By the time you read this, Stefano will be in custody. You were right, about the forgery, about him, about me. I am a coward. I pushed you away because letting you close terrified me more than any enemy I've ever faced. The money is yours, no strings attached. Enough to finish your degree, start fresh, build the life you deserve. Not payment, restitution for the years you lost, and for the pain I caused trying to protect you the only way I knew how. Dr. Okonkwo has offered you an apprenticeship. She says you're the most naturally talented authenticator she's worked with in decades. The position is yours if you want it. I understand if you never want to see me again. I deserve that. But I need you to know. Meeting you changed me. You made me believe that truth matters more than comfort, that beauty exists even in darkness, that someone could see all of me and choose to stay anyway. I wasn't brave enough to let you. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for all of it. If you can forgive me, not now, maybe not ever, but someday, you know where to find me. Yours in truth, Alessandro. Zoe read the letter 3 times, tears falling onto the paper, smudging his careful words. What are you going to do? Teresa asked. I don't know. Zoe wiped her eyes. He hurt me, Mama. He made me feel like I mattered and then threw me away like I was nothing. But he was trying to protect me. In the stupidest, most hurtful way possible. But he was trying to keep me safe from his world. She looked at her mother. And he chose truth anyway. Even after I left. He did the right thing. The question is whether doing the right thing is enough. Zoe thought about her father, about 3 years of invisibility, about the way Alessandro had looked at her when she explained the painting's flaws. Like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. She thought about his grief for his brother, his desperate need to honor beauty, his terrified confession that she made him feel less alone. She thought about the choice he'd given her. Safety and comfort and a new life, no strings attached. He wasn't trying to buy her back. He was trying to give her freedom. The question was, what did she want to do with it? 1 week later, Zoe stood outside Alessandro's estate wearing a dress Teresa had insisted she buy. Simple but elegant, the kind of dress that said I belong here instead of I clean here. Her hands shook as she pressed the intercom. Yes. Paolo's voice crackled through. It's Zoe Green. I'm here to see Alessandro. A long pause. Then, come in. The gate swung open like an invitation or a trap. Zoe couldn't tell which. Paolo met her at the door, his expression carefully neutral. He's in the gallery. Where it started. Zoe's heels clicked on marble as she walked corridors she'd once scrubbed on her knees. Everything looked different from this angle. Not because the house had changed, but because she had. The gallery was exactly as she remembered. Except the wall where the Caravaggio had hung now held a different painting. A landscape, beautiful and melancholy, painted by someone Zoe didn't recognize. Alessandro stood before it, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the naked hope and fear in his expression made her chest ache. You came, he said, his voice rough. I came. They stared at each other across the space where she'd once dropped champagne, where she'd spoken truth and shattered both their worlds. I got the apprenticeship, Zoe said. Dr. Okonkwo is incredible. Demanding and brilliant and everything I hoped learning from her would be. I'm glad. I also enrolled to finish my degree. Online courses, so I can work and study simultaneously. That's good. That's... Alessandro's voice caught. I'm happy for you, Zoe. Are you? Yes. You deserve everything you've worked for. Everything you sacrificed. Zoe took a step closer. The money you sent. It was too much. It wasn't enough. Alessandro. I'm sorry. The words burst out of him like a confession. I'm sorry for what I said, how I said it. You were right. I was a coward. I pushed you away because caring about you terrified me more than anything in my life. Because everyone I love dies or betrays me, and I couldn't. His voice broke. I couldn't watch you become another casualty of my world. So you hurt me first. Zoe's voice was quiet. Before I could hurt you. Before life could take me away. Yes. That's not protection, Alessandro. That's just another kind of destruction. I know. I know that now. He took a step toward her, stopped himself. But I meant what I wrote. Meeting you changed me. You made me want to be brave enough for truth. For beauty. For something beyond survival and violence. And when Stefano forced my hand, when I had to choose between family and what was right. He swallowed hard. I chose right because you taught me that truth matters more than comfort. Even when it costs everything. Zoe looked at the landscape painting. What is this? It's Marco's. He painted it the summer before he died. It's not technically brilliant, but it's honest. Real. He gave it to me, and I hid it in storage because looking at it hurt too much. Alessandro moved to stand beside her. But you taught me that living with beautiful truth is worth the pain. So I hung it where the lie used to be. Tears blurred Zoe's vision. It's lovely. It's not why you came here, though. Alessandro finally turned to face her fully. Why did you come, Zoe? She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. Because I've spent a week being angry at you. Hurt by you. Trying to convince myself that I'm better off without someone who could discard me so easily. You are better off. Let me finish. She moved closer, close enough to see the shadows under his eyes, the way grief and hope warred in his expression. I spent a week trying to hate you. And I couldn't. Because underneath the fear and the walls and the stupid, hurtful things you said, I saw the truth. You were trying to protect me the only way you knew how, by pushing me away before your world could destroy me. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. It makes it human. Flawed. Terrified. Zoe reached up, cupped his face in her hands. But here's the thing about truth, Alessandro. It goes both ways. You need to hear mine. Okay. I'm falling in love with you. The words came out steady, sure. With a man who listened when I spoke truth. Who honored his brother by choosing right over easy. Who sees me, really sees me, not as a maid or a tool, but as someone worth knowing. Worth protecting. Even if you did it badly. Alessandro's breath hitched. Zoe. I'm not finished. I'm also terrified. Of your world, of being hurt again, of losing myself in someone else's life the way I did when I gave up everything for my mother. But I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I'd been brave enough to stay. You're brave enough, Alessandro whispered. You're the bravest person I know. Then be brave with me. Zoe pressed her forehead to his. Choose me. Choose us. Not as employer and employee, not as powerful man and invisible woman, but as two people who see each other's truth and decide it's worth the risk. Alessandro's arms came around her, pulling her close with a desperation that spoke of weeks of regret and hope. I choose you. God help me, I choose you over safety, over comfort, over everything. Then he kissed her the way she'd been dreaming about for a week. Like she was oxygen, like she was home, like she was the beautiful truth he'd been searching for his entire life. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Zoe smiled through her tears. So what now? Now we figure it out together. You finish your degree. Work with Dr. Okonkwo. Build your career. Alessandro brushed tears from her cheeks. And I learn how to be someone worthy of you. Someone who doesn't push away the best thing that's ever happened to him. You're already worthy, Zoe said. You just have to believe it. They stood there in the gallery where everything had started, where a $15 million lie had led to a truth neither expected. Around them, art filled the walls. Some real, some fake, all beautiful in their own way. I love you, Zoe Green, Alessandro said, the words careful and true. I don't know how to do this, how to be in love without fear, but I want to learn. I love you too, Zoe whispered back. And we'll learn together. How to trust. How to be brave. How to build something real in a world that taught us both to hide. From the doorway, a discreet cough made them turn. Teresa stood there, Paolo beside her, both trying not to smile. Mama. Zoe blinked in surprise. Paolo brought me. Said you might need someone in your corner. Teresa's eyes were bright with tears. But it looks like you did just fine on your own. Zoe laughed, the sound bright and free. Alessandro kept his arm around her waist, anchoring her, claiming her, choosing her in front of witnesses. Actually, Zoe said, looking between her mother and the man she loved, I think I had plenty of people in my corner. I just had to be brave enough to let them stay there. Alessandro pressed a kiss to her temple. For the record, I'm never letting you go again.
Good, Zoe said, leaning into him, because I'm not going anywhere.
And in the gallery where truth had shattered beautiful lies, where a maid's daughter had found her voice and a mafia boss had found his heart, they stood together, imperfect, terrified, and finally whole. Love, truth, courage. Which matters most to you and why? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us why being brave is always worth it.